incarnation of it somewhere?
No, they, John Denny and, what's Mike's last name? Mike Ferrona moved down to Nashville.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think they closed that place up.
Oh yeah. It's I can't remember what it is now.
Yeah.
But I thought there was people still recording there because there was people coming in and out.
It's entirely possible, but not that I know of. It might be a private place. But I opened up Lava Room in 2003, and we used to be over on the west side in the old American Greetings building. And we were there from 2003 to 2008. 2008, we moved over to right behind the Cleveland Agora. So we're over there on 55th and Prospect. And I've been there for, 7 years now? 2015, yeah. So Lava Room's been open, I think, 12 years. Jeez, man, time goes by fast.
I still remember that whole facility too.
What can you speak to for your longevity? How you've been able to stay afloat with so many bigger studios closing?
Cleveland's a much cheaper place to operate than New York, LA. So the cost of real estate, I think that's why most of the big rooms close up in New York. The cost of real estate was just so expensive that it was just hard to maintain, your monthly nut just in rent. The music industry goes up and down in terms of just business, that kind of stuff. It's cyclical. Things change. Everybody makes it sound like there's a huge panic with, with record sales down, and there is to a degree, but it's shifting from hard sales to downloads to touring is up, huge compared to where it was like 5 years ago. So the way that artists are making money is different. But I think we were able to continue operating because Cleveland's a good place to be able to open a business. But, 2008, 2009, anybody that had a business then, when the recession was happening, I don't know how everybody made it through that. I think everybody just everybody was hurting, so, you just weathered the storm. But I think the relationships that we made with our clients and other businesses and business-to-business work has kept us open long. We have a really good reputation, I think, in Cleveland. I'm surprised and shocked, actually, how many people have heard of us but have never been there. We have, this phantom kind of a reputation. They know it exists, but they're not really sure where it is. We're like the Kaiser Sose of the recording industry.
Yeah, for sure. People always talk about this fictional place, the Lava Room.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that they're not ready to be in our facility. You know what I mean? If they're doing an EP or they're doing something more on a budget, and that's really not the case at all. I think we've kind of gotten a weird reputation of being more of an elitist, if you will, without it, sounding egotistical. It's just about, I think the rooms look really nice, and people assume that they can't afford us because we don't publicize our rates. So I think a lot of the local clientele doesn't make it to our doors often because they just think that they can't afford us, and that's not true at all. We've got 3 different rooms, from budgets down here all the way up to major label budgets. So that's one of the reasons I'm here today, is just trying to get more involved in the community and talk to people and just kind of get more in touch with what's going on in Cleveland. We're launching a new marketing campaign to just kind of rebrand the studio and get more involved in what we can do with artists that are here, as opposed to just kind of waiting for them to come through our door. We're kind of reaching out to see how we can help them, and networking is really where it's at.
Sort of just an engineer question to the RAT students that might listen in. How long as an engineer did it take before you got a record sounding the way you wanted it?
Never get a record sounding the way I want. I've been doing it at least 12 years. Now, in my opinion, a record is never done. I've listened to it, I'll finish it, and I'll think it sounds good. I'll listen to it a month later, and I'll find things I could change to make it better. But I think that's how you stay on top of your game, is you have to not think like you're awesome. If you think you're awesome, there's going to be another guy that's better than you. But I'd say from the mix side and the production side, a good 7 to 10 years. I thought I knew stuff yesterday that I know today, and tomorrow I'll know more. And it's a humbling experience, but you have to just constantly challenge yourself in terms of your technique and industry. Styles change, equipment changes, software changes, so you have to, you'll get outdated really fast, and there's always a younger guy that wants your job or your space in the universe. So, yeah, it's a challenging career for sure, but it takes time. A lot of guys, you can't just do it overnight. I think I went through college, I got my education, but I didn't really learn this business until I just did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you gain more experience just by going and doing. A good professor of mine in college asked me what I wanted to do when I graduated, and I said I wanted to produce records. And I said, what should I do? Where should I start? He said, just start producing. And I never knew what that meant until I started producing. And the first project you produce is probably not going to be good. But the next one will be better, and the next one will be better after that, and so on. Hopefully. If not, then, I don't know, maybe you should not produce.
In your definition, what is a producer? Because I have different definition for
I suppose it depends on what style of music you're talking about. It's a producer in the hip-hop industry is more of I think a stereotype term, because a producer in rock and pop is somebody that works with an artist, works with a songwriter. In the hip-hop industry, a producer often is a guy that composes. I do composition as a producer in other styles of music, but my definition of a producer is somebody that can understand what the artist's vision is, help them achieve what they want to achieve, but also keeping it relevant to the business. So what I mean by that is, if I'm working with an artist that's doing, let's say, just a regular rock record, they might have an idea of certain kinds of song arrangements. And when I sit down and I look at the song, I'll make suggestions to them. If we're marketing this to radio, or if we're marketing this to a younger generation, there's certain kinds of drum sounds or guitar sounds that are going to be trendy for what the market's like. So that doesn't always mean that that's how you have to do it, but I help the artist kind of unravel their vision, but also helping them put together a project that's going to be most viable for the market. Does that make sense? It's tough, and it's guesswork too, because to be a great producer, I think you have to take risks to try to do things that other people aren't doing. But at the same time, there's a whole lot of failure that can happen in there too. But the best people that I admire are people that just kind of did their own thing and didn't follow the industry. But it's really hard to do, because most people look at something, they like it, and they go, all right, I want to make my record sound just like this guy's record. But by the time you finish that guy's record's not going to be relevant. It's the next guy's record who's going to be relevant. So you're kind of always chasing your tail. So that's like one of the pitfalls in the production game, is trying to be unique, but you don't know what unique is yet until it happens. So it's a guessing game, but it's fun.
How long has the publishing entity existed then?
2 years on that. I've been kicking around publishing with material that I've done myself, but I haven't owned a publishing company, and we opened it 2 years ago, and really started going full throttle in terms of licensing music and getting things out there and trying to help the artists draw passive income on their works. A lot of bands don't realize that there's a huge opportunity out there to be able to license their music for commercial, internet, film, video, that kind of stuff. And they just have to be able to get it in the right hands. So the reason I started the publishing company was to help the artists earn money from their compositions in order to help them be able to support their next record. So it started off as, if you want to call it, a selfish idea, because they can't afford to pay me unless they're making money, and I can't help them make money unless we do a product. So we decided to start things that way, and we've had some really good success with placements on a lot of indie-type shows, reality TV, college, TV shows that deal with like the younger college kid generation kind of stuff, cable TV stuff, and it pays pretty decent.
Have you found it's more legit approaching people under the umbrella of being a publisher than if like an indie artist just called the same people and said, take my songs please, or whatever? I
think most indie artists don't even really understand publishing. I think they think, well, it's like there's a big stigma about what artists seem like they want in terms of like everybody's out chasing that record deal. In my opinion, the record deal is it's kind of a thing of the past because major labels are starting to disappear, and artists, frankly, can do it on their own if they know how to run their band like a business. If they network with the right people, they can be the pinnacle of where the business starts and not have to rely on record labels. And that's not to say that it's not, there's not opportunities out there, but for bands that want to get going, they can start doing a lot on their own before they have to go in that route, or if they want to. But I think educating the artists that we work with to tell them about the opportunities that are out there. We look to just broaden our catalog with as much music as we can, because most of what we license and market is for television. So I don't know what TV's like, what the next season of Meeting or Keeping Up with the Kardashians is going to want. I've placed songs there that are in the pop and in the rock market. So who knows what the next, Duck Dynasty, shows like that. They use a lot of music, and they use a lot of independent music because it's not as expensive as hiring major label artists. So there's a huge opportunity out there for bands, but they don't really know how to get there. So often we go out, and the studio is a great opportunity for us to meet bands because we're already working with them on their projects. So if it's something that I think I can do something with, of course I'll approach them. And then they find us on the internet and submit material, and I get good stuff and I get bad stuff. But we try to just educate as much as we can to help the indie artists.
Can you give us an example of something you've placed?
I had an artist named Christian Kaiser. He's I guess you would call him pop country. He's out in Sandusky. We've placed a few songs with him on MTV's running a lot of shows like Big Brother and Road Rules and new versions of those kind of shows. And he's placed 2 or 3 songs there. I have a pop artist from Cuba who has 3 songs that placed in a number of different episodes on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And I think this Teen Wolf was another. I think MTV might own the network that runs some of those shows. And Royal Vasa is a group that, do you know those guys?
Yeah, you got Royal Vasa place?
Hmm?
Yeah.
Yeah, Royal Vasa, I got licensed for Fox Sports for playing their songs in arenas, so across the country. Yeah, so we haven't gotten our cue sheets yet back from that. I'm waiting to see how many actual performances they've gotten for those, because I think that's gonna be our big ticket this year. The publishing money comes real slow. They pay about every 12 to 18 months. It's after a season runs, which for this Fox Sports, that's the first time we've licensed with Fox Sports, but most of the shows, they'll run an entire year for their season, then after that they have 6 months to submit their cue sheets. So by the time we get royalty payments, it takes a while. The only thing that's really, really depressing for us is with, so many people are using Pandora, Spotify, a lot of internet radio. The artist makes so little money there. I had 300,000 spins for a number of different tracks off this Cuban pop artist, and my royalty check was for $8. And I was like, 300,000 spins on the internet. I was excited. I'm like, wow, she's really starting to push some traffic. $8.
And you think the traffic was as a result of the placements, or?
Yeah. It's residual money that's just happening out there. But 300,000 spins that's a lot of spins.
Oh, yeah.
That's like 2 Happy Meals. Yeah. 2 unhappy meals.
So in reaction to that statement as far as publishing, what do you think about Tidal, the new streaming service that Jay-Z and a couple of celebrities started?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm still waiting for what's going to happen with the next version of the MP3. I'm waiting on that. Everything is so technology based right now that it's I'm not really sure. You know, there's so many things going on in the government right now with laws trying to be passed to pay artists more money for, you know, a lot of these internet type streams. And, you know, if they get, you know, they want to pay artists less royalty money because they're spending it so much. But artists aren't really making enough to survive off that. So that's why live performances are you know, they're touring so much more and they're doing well. But it's still, it's tough. You know, it's tough to make a dollar in the music industry.
Yeah. Can you, when we met the one time briefly, you had talked about, so I can't remember the name of the band, but wasn't it more a merchandising thing with them?
Oh, Black Veil Brides?
Yeah.
Yeah, they yeah, most bands in that genre of music. You guys familiar with those guys?
Mm-hmm.
They yeah, they make so much money with merchandise from like Hot Topic. You know, in that market, they might sell, I don't know, 3,000-4,000 CDs a month, but they'll sell $100,000 a month worth of T-shirts.
The chains.
Oh,
they got hats.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, marketing there is.
Yeah.
I suppose it's like that with most of the industry, but with bands in that genre, you know, they appeal to that, like, I don't know, 13 to 18-year-old younger generation. You know, boys and girls, and that's what those kids do. You know, they're socially, you know, they're wearing the shirts and the hats and all that kind of stuff. It's like social statements, but I think when you get into older artists that might be country artists or, you know, rock or something like that, that might not appeal to those kind of trends. I think it's a little harder for them to make money, but marketing and merchandise that's how most bands are sustaining themselves when they tour. They might sell a handful of CDs from show to show, but they sell a ton of T-shirts. You probably see that in your place, right?
It depends on the genre and, you know, who's coming through. Some people carry tons of merch.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's expensive to move around, but, you know, people want music to go right in their phone now, you know. Eventually, I'm waiting for the day when music just goes, like, right into your head. You just put something in your face and you just get iTunes right into your brain. And CDs I don't know how long CDs are going to be around. I'm waiting for them to be replaced. But they're still there. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's hard to guess what's going to come next. I just know that the market is saturated so much with music, it's hard to come up with something original now. Did you guys see all that stuff that happened with that lawsuit with Robin Thicke? You know, and it's like I listened to the track. I'm sure Robin Thicke's going to be all right financially. But I listened to the track and I was like, well, I mean, it's kind of a stretch to say that it was, you know, with sound effects that sounded, you know, very similar, but it's hard to come up with an independently, you know, original idea now. So
Where are they on that? They're appealing it, right?
they're going to appeal it, yeah.
Because yeah,
I think it'll be thrown out because it doesn't follow the law. Like it doesn't follow the law.
No.
Legally, they're not plagiarizing. Like
No. No, and I mean, those guys know better anyway, you know, and there's probably a team of lawyers that are part of every project that they do anyway. So, you know, to make a mistake that, you know, simple, I would be really surprised.
I mean, because it's close, but it seems like they kind of move some stuff around to make it kind of fit that little that area.
Yeah.
So when you first started Lava Room, was it back, you know, it was back in the, early 2000s, but when you started producing, was it more about kind of helping bands shop for labels back then, or like has that changed? Am I making that up?
No, that was the case. You know, I think there were very few, like the home studio really wasn't around at that time. So if a band wanted to do a recording, most of them, I would say most bands, or any artist for that matter, kind of had their ducks in a row. You know, their music was relatively polished. You know, they were ready for the studio. They came in prepared. And, you know, then the next thing was radio used to be, you know, good support. we used to have radio stations in Cleveland that would play local music. Now it's, if I went to MMS with a song, they'd go, no, I like you, I think the song's great, but, there's somebody from Seattle that's programming the playlist for Cleveland. So it's impossible to get on, regular terrestrial radio. And frankly, I don't think as many people listen to it as did, 15 years ago. So everybody's, gone technology-wise down to a smartphone or streaming, that kind of stuff. But that's where it started. Every band that came in back in 2003, that was their goal. We'd do a record, they'd have a giant CD release party, we'd pitch it to labels, they'd showcase, and then we'd see what happened after that. And they would get showcases. Now, it's labels want to see what the band looks like before they hear anything. That is so depressing to me. I understand it because they want to know if they got a product to market, because it's really, it's a little disheartening what we can do in the studio. Sometimes I actually feel bad about it. After we bring an artist in that may or may not be able to sing good, or a drummer that's not really solid, there's tools to fix all that. I can put out equally competitive record for anybody that comes in, as long as you have the ability to make sound with your mouth. I can make it sound good. But, proof's in the pudding when you're touring.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's like, I can send anybody a record, but they know anybody can make a record sound good. So then they want to see the artist. So now they see the artist first, and then they make their decision of whether or not they want to even hear the record. So that's why I don't even go that route anymore. I don't even really promote that much with the artists that I work with. Is what I do is I try to help them first create a marketing plan for themselves, make sure they have a website, YouTube videos going on. That's really where bands are breaking now, is they have to have content on YouTube, starts on YouTube. That's really the end-all, be-all source of info right now for the music industry. And beyond that, it's just building a fan base. And it's up to them to be able to put the time in to be able to, converse. Social media is such a huge element of, how people actually communicate now. So it's way easier now to get your content out there. So if you've got a good project and the band is good or the artist is good, they got good material, you can hit, millions of people just by spending some time social media wise. So I know I kind of strayed around your question, but the answer is yes, we used to.
Well, now that you've taken on a little bit more of the publishing, what do you find works and doesn't work as far as publishing goes?
You mean music-wise?
Yeah, as far as...
That's a tough question, because I can find a place for just about any music. There may be certain styles of music that happen more frequently, like straight up pop music was probably the most readily available and used the most because it would translate into commercials. It's not stylistically, like if you're selling a number of different products, you can probably use a standard regular pop song that makes somebody kind of feel happy, and it would fit in just about any commercial. If somebody had like a death metal band, probably not going to help them sell razors, or market clothing to children. But if it's got skulls and dragons on it, maybe that's what they use. But I would say stylistically, we can find a place for just about everything. What I haven't personally broken into is the big side of feature films. It's a boys' club there, and it's tough to get in, and it takes time to network, and I've been working on that for the last year and a half. But I'm going to get there. It's just taking time. But that's where the big money is. My business partner, his wife's cousin is a guy named Christopher Columbus. I think I told you this when we spoke last time. He's done all the Harry Potter movies. So that's kind of as big as I could think in the film industry. So we're waiting to use that card. I want to make sure that we've got our catalog as huge as we need it to be. And once I, call in that favor, I'm hoping that puts us on the right path. So, but that's all strategic planning. That's going to take us a little time to kind of get ready. But that's the next venture for sure.
Mhm.
So say if you had an independent artist came to you for publishing to get placement, how would you split the percentage? Would it be 50-50?
Yeah, what we do non-exclusive publishing deals for when we're doing placements. We'll do non-exclusive, so the artist could go. We don't wrap up their song, so they can't do anything else with it. That's why we'll do non-exclusive. So we can do a non-exclusive deal with them. The publishing money gets split 50-50. They don't pay anything for this. We just go start shopping the material, trying to make it earn money. So we'll send it to as many music supervisors as we can, connections that we can in terms of whether people are looking for music for independent films or commercials, or if they want some background music. Like a big placement for, especially for monetization for music, is every business now is creating YouTube channels to sell their products.
Right.
So there's so much advertising on YouTube that they have to license the music that they put behind, their material. If somebody's going to be selling tires, like I don't know if you guys even pay attention to this. When you watch a video on YouTube, usually there's commercials prior to that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So a lot of those commercials for products, they have music in there. So the music that they get for that, they have to license from somebody. So we target companies like that to be able to put our catalog out there, and then they look for that music, and they would search our site for something like if they're looking for rock music that's up tempo, maybe around 110 beats per minute. They can search like that, and they'll pull up a bunch of catalog of material that they can listen to, and they just start listening.
So that's all metadata when they're looking for terms.
Mm-hmm.
So does the artist, when they approach you, provide you with all the metadata, or do you?
We will
You
have like a
catalog it.
questionnaire that they fill out,
Okay.
and then what's that?
I've seen one of those, like the catalog sheet. Does it have like a color and the name of the title? or
Yeah,
something like
it's
that?
pretty complicated. We're actually in the middle of a revamp on our website, and I've got programmers that just write nothing but computer code to create algorithms to just make that easier to catalog that stuff. And the easier it is for a music supervisor to find material that they want on a website out of convenience, the more they're going to come back to your site. So that's kind of where we're at. It's constantly updating a website, and a lot of cost involved, and putting together a service that makes it easy for them to find material and that kind of stuff. But to answer your question, yeah, it's a 50-50 split between the publisher and the artist.
That's cool.
Does the artist is there writing credit that goes to the writer then too, or have we just covered all the percentage then?
Well, it's 50% writers
Uh-huh.
and 50% publishing.
Okay.
So it's a real complicated breakdown of how, whether or not your music is published with ASCAP or BMI. I don't know how familiar you guys are with this. BMI does 100%, 100%.
Right.
I'll just confuse you if I go further, but ASCAP is just straight 100%, which makes sense to me. If you split that in half, it'd be 50% for the writers, 50% for the publishers.
Right.
But BMI does 100% writers to the writers, 100% publishing to the publishers.
Yeah, I'm with BMI. So like the publisher get that 100, and then like hip hop, say if he produced the beat, then I get my 50% because I wrote the lyrics and
Mhm.
he get 50%, right?
Yeah,
Something
it's confusing. There should be a standard, I think, but it still ends up, you end up getting the same money. It's just how it looks on paper,
yeah.
whether it's a 200% scale or a 100% scale.
With the publishing company, I know it seems like we're dealing a lot with licensing. Have you had any placements with, I guess it would pretty much just be country and pop, that like where people want their songs to record for other artists?
We have not yet, but I'm working a couple records now. I've got a country record that we did about 6 months ago, and the country music is unique to all the other genres of music because there's some songs in country where most of the tracks in country music are not written by the artist. They're performed by the artist but not written. There's just a small percentage of people that do their own writing. But there's a lot of country songs that have been recorded multiply by this artist and that artist and this artist at the same time. It's not like, Hank Williams recorded this song and then 20 years later, this person did it. It's like Keith Urban might have a song out at the same time, and you might find 2 or 3 other people at the same time with the same song, and that just boggles my mind. Country music, they find a way to just draw every single penny they can out of a song. So, but they're good at it. So, it's an exhausting. I could never move down to Nashville because it's just exhausting. They work on a 9 to 5 day too, which blows my mind because I'm on like a 24-hour day every day. But things move fast down there. But they've got a lot of success. Yeah, they have perfected the machine of how to get a song to make money. But yeah, we haven't sold any songs yet because we just started doing that. We've been mostly focusing on placements, but that's in the works too. So it's difficult in the country market. I'm hoping that we're going to have more identity because we're not from Nashville, so that might make us stand out a little more. But we're looking at putting together co-publishing deals too, because some of the bigger publishers in Nashville, like Razor and Tie, they're always looking for material for artists that they funnel music to. So if somebody like Brown Steak Music happens to have a great record or even just a hot single, I can do a co-pub deal with Razor and Tie and split the residuals with them, and then they can just push it to an artist that they have a relationship with. Once again, boys club. It's these producers, these record labels deal with these publishing companies. So it's really hard to break into any one of those industries without a favor happening. So you kind of have to carve those out. But to be successful in this business, half of it's talent, half of it's like your personality. So if you're a jerk, you're not going anywhere. If you're a good schmoozer and a good talker, you'll move a whole lot faster than that guy that just doesn't get along with people. But it's tough. It's tough to break in. I've been doing this 12 years and I'm still climbing the mountain. So, but it's fun.
What in the 12 years, like, what has served you the best? Like, like personal traits of yours that you feel like have served you the best.
I have an innate ability to make people laugh all the time, and I think it makes people relaxed in the studio because there's a lot of tension that happens in the studio. And I'm a creative person, but I make people feel comfortable and help them perform. And I think that's established long-term relationships with me, with artists that I work with, because they not only like the work that I do, but they like working on records with me. So I've formed a bond with them, and that helps me. I don't advertise personally for producing projects. 99% of all the work that I do is all referral. So if I produce this particular band, somebody will hear that record, flip it over, and they'll call me because they liked this group. Or they might run into somebody out, while they're on tour, and they'll say, "Who produced your record?" And they'll find me on LinkedIn, and they'll listen to projects that I've done. And a lot of it is just the relationship that I have with the artists. In order to help them perform, you have to find a way to keep them under control. Artists, their disposition in the studio, there's a lot of tension that happens to a recording session. If somebody's just not having their best day, to be able to get their best vocal take. If I was listening to a singer and said, "That sounded just absolutely terrible," they would lose it. If I found a way psychologically to help them, motivate them, whatever I have to do to get that performance, then they understand that, and they're like, "Okay, I'm having an off day."
If you were in that situation and somebody and a vocalist did have a take that was just like not usable, it was like wasn't even close, how would you deal with that situation?
I find a way to make them relax. It's usually just going in a 180-degree different direction. If they're just not getting it, I would just ask them, let's try to re-sing that again, but try to make it sound terrible. And they'll look at me like I have two heads. And they're like, "Well, why do you want it to sound terrible?" And I want to just see what that approach is. And they'll try that and they'll go, that just sounds awful. Let me just try it my way. And then they'll sing it again and it'll be a fresh thought and then they'll do it great. You know, a lot of what makes a good performance good is believing in what they're doing. And if they have, most people that I work with are already at an ability where they're pros. Everybody's not, you know, as good as the next person, but most of the clientele that I deal with are all really solid artists. But they have bad days. You know, if somebody comes in and they go, I just can't do it today. You know, if I've worked with them before and I know what their ability is, you know, we'll sit and we'll talk about what the lyrics are about in the song, you know, and I'll have them explain to me, you know, well, help me understand what this track is about. And then as they explain it to me, then I can understand like what the mood is supposed to be and what makes a successful track. To me is when they're singing, do I believe what, you know, the emotion that they have? And the average listener, I don't think the average listener can tell pitch and rhythm nearly as much as they can tell whether or not the artist believes what they're singing. Because I've heard two like super fantastically talented artists sing the same song. One just sang it because they have talent, and the other one sang it not as much talent but really believed it, and that believable track will kill that other track 100 times over. So I find a way to, you know, just like relax the client that I'm working with. And usually it's just joking about stuff. I tell funny stories. Just weird things happen to me all the time. And I get to work with a lot of really just off the beaten path kind of people. So I'll tell them about stuff, you know, that I'd worked on before. And, you know, and it breaks the ice. You know, I've worked with artists from, like my favorite artists are guys like, I think I've done sessions with Joe Walsh from the Eagles. And I've done some really funny sessions, like I tracked a record with Michael Bolton. And I thought Michael Bolton, I mean, I'm assuming everybody knows who he is, right? Like, as soon as a record company called and said, we want to book Michael Bolton in your studio, I instantly thought of Office Space. So I'm thinking, I got to ask this guy about being in Office Space. And the guy he was a pro. You know, I don't like any of his material, but I have a new respect for him because he was such a nice guy. And then, you know, we've had Justin Bieber in the studio. And, you know, I don't even like to tell people that. Justin Bieber is a hugely successful artist, but he's an idiot. You know, he really is. And the rider that I got, you know, I had to get birthday cake Oreos and, you know, Frankenberry cereal for this kid and 20 different kinds of Gatorade to make him happy. But he didn't cause us any trouble, you know, but it was just really funny to see, you know, and he probably had more money in his pocket when he walked in the studio than I made last year, you know, but... You know, it's like those kind of stories. We'll sit and we'll talk about stuff like that, and it's funny.
Frankenberry.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you work? Do you have partners? Do you like rent studio space to other engineers?
I have 3 studios myself, and I rent a 4th one to a freelance guy. I don't have any partners. I used to have a partner that didn't work out. It's very difficult working in a business like this. Partners in general, it's a marriage, but it's hard working when you're trying to get everybody on the same page. So I had done that in the past unsuccessfully. A good friend of mine, we're still friends now, just the partnership didn't work.
So do you have engineers that you hire?
Yeah, all my engineers are freelance guys. I have 7 engineers that work for me.
Do you hire producers?
Yeah. Yeah, almost all the engineers produce except for a couple of the younger guys. So I've got 5 or 4 producers and 3, I would call them tier 1 engineers. They've been engineering for 2 years or less. And they don't do any production work, they just do engineering. So they do a lot of just overdub type work for projects. They have some indie projects that they do on their own, and they do some commercial work too. But we have a pretty round group of people in terms of some guys are specialized in rock and pop and hip hop and country. Everybody does everything, but each one of these guys has kind of their own specialty. So things that they like to work on more so than other styles, but everybody does everything. And then we do commercial work too and some film work and that kind of stuff.
What if like an artist comes in and they have their own like set of engineers and producers and
Producers, yes, very rarely. On the local level, doesn't happen very often. Because if they were a top engineer in town, most likely they'd be on our staff. So I'll sell studio time to guys that want to bring their own engineer, but I'll still put one of our engineers on the session just to make sure the
Because
gears.
y'all know everybody.
Yeah, I kind of don't like the idea of them blowing up my place.
Right.
But we do on like bigger projects, a lot of, anytime we do a profile client that comes in from out of town, often they'll bring their own engineer and then either have a second engineer or one of our staff. Sometimes they use our engineers or an assistant.
What's the hourly rate if I want you to get birthday cake Oreos and 20 different types of Gatorade for me?
$1,500 a day. I would get you all that stuff you need. We could fill up the whole 2 hours with just riders that I've had over the last 13 years. So that is just the craziest
I didn't
thing.
even know studios had writers. This
They
is
do.
like news to me. Yeah.
I did an NBA halftime show spot with Nicole from the Pussycat Dolls a couple years ago, and she would not perform in the studio unless we replaced our light bulbs with 60-watt Sylvania natural light bulbs. We had incandescent light bulbs, just regular light bulbs. She would not perform. Studio had to be 72 degrees, and it had to have Sylvania 60-watt natural light bulbs.
People rich, they some picky.
Yeah.
So, if say a recording arts and technology student was looking to say get on your engineering staff, what would be some prerequisites or some ways to go about getting experience to get into that arena?
Every one of our engineers starts out with an internship. And an internship is not a set specific amount of time. It's however long it takes you to be ready, basically how I explain it. Mostly because no matter what you learn in school, myself included, the real just nuts and bolts about working with people. I think that's what I never learned in school. That's what I find most people don't have enough experience in, is just working with people. Most of the people that we work with are not the average person, so there's just different types of personalities. So learning how to listen first, speak second, that kind of stuff, and be able to kind of understand how the artist works and be able to work in a creative environment happens with experience. So all of our staff guys that work for me now at one point in time had interned, myself included. When I came out of college, that was my prerequisite, do an internship first. And our internship starts with a minimum of 25 hours a week. But what it is basically learning the skills to set up mics and run a session and format hard drives and do transfers and mix and that kind of stuff. And what we do is once an intern is skilled enough that they can set up for a session, we have them do a test project in each one of the studios because the studios have different equipment. And I let them go find a band or a project or an artist or whatever they want to do, and they bring them in the studio on their own. I'll comp the time. They record the project pro bono for the artist. And then I just listen to it. We sit down and I critique it. And I help them hone their skills until I feel confident that if somebody came in and paid their hard-earned money to cut a record with us, that I could put this guy on that project and he would be competent enough to satisfy their needs.
And how long into the internship process do you find that obviously everyone's at a different pace, but
Everyone's on a completely different pace. You'd be shocked that the interns that I've had and I tell every intern this when they come in day one. We have an intern checklist, which is all the things that I expect everybody to do every day, which it starts with opening up the doors, firing up the rooms, making sure the place looks good and is clean, versus setting up microphones, all that kind of stuff. If a client needs a food run or something like that, there's some of those kind of things that they might need to do. But anytime there's a room empty, they're free to take a hard drive in there, open it up, work on their chops with mixing, overdubbing, that kind of stuff. And it's really ironic the amount of time I see an intern just sit up front watching YouTube videos. When I got out of college, I could not wait to get in the studio. So I was there 18 hours a day. When a room was empty, I had a reel of tape on a machine, and I was practicing my mix chops. And my goal was, I don't want to be here for nothing. I want to earn a living. So I think the younger generation interns that don't have house payments and kids and things like that, it takes them longer, it seems. I explain it all to them. You can do this for 3 months, 6 months, or you can take the trash out of the studio for 3 years. I will love it till you're gone. But it's up to you. You set your own parameters.
And that's unpaid then?
Mm-hmm. But it's a humbling experience because my studio manager, his name is Chris Ebert. He's been with me for about 7 years. When he got out of college, he went to Full Sail in Florida. When he got out of college, he's from this area. He came up and started interning. And that kid sat next to me every hour of every session I did for about 3 months. And, he took great notes. He charted. He was just, I was so sad to see him become an engineer because he was so good as an assistant. And
You try to hold him down.
yeah. I kind of wanted to just go, no, this test project is terrible. But he's now my studio engineer, and he's my number 2 guy that profile projects come in. I'm spending more time running the business, and he's doing, he's working on this film I told you that we're working on, this big 5.1 documentary. He's doing that now for me because I'm here talking with you guys. So he earned his place, and I have so much respect for that guy because I could hand him the keys to the studio and not worry that there would anything, that he would ever do anything malicious there, because he treats that place like I do, and there's like this loyalty and this respect thing that we have with our engineers, and it's not for everybody. There's certain people that have that gumption to just want to do it, and there's other people that just kind of fly through at their own pace, and that's cool too. You know what I mean? Everybody's different, so it's really hard. If anybody asks me how long is the internship, I go, it's up to you. That's as hard as you want to work. So I've got some engineers that have been there just a couple months interned for a couple months, and they've been engineers for me for 5 years. Then I've had other people that have interned for a year and a half and then just left. So, it's weird. So it's all, you get out of it what you put into it. That's what I tell everybody day one.
So you said you're working to work with more local bands. Is your clientele not as local?
My personal clientele?
Yeah, at Lava Room. There's Lava Room.
Lava Room in general, our clientele is about maybe 65 to 70% local. Maybe not that high. Maybe 60 to 65%. We do a fair amount of regional work between like Pennsylvania, Illinois, and not so much south. 1 or 2 states away, people will travel. Usually what's within, a 6 to 8 hour drive, they'll come here for 4 or 5 days at a time. But the bulk of the work that we do, the majority of it would be considered local work. I personally, I'd rather work with local younger artists that haven't gotten jaded in the industry yet. They're easier to deal with. It's more fun. It's creative. The bigger the artist, usually the bigger the problem. It's fun working at a talent level that high, but often it comes with a whole bunch of baggage like Sylvania, natural light stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Have you found as a producer, do you just help a band see their project all the way through? Do you find yourself, sneaking the leader aside, going, "Hey, your bassist, we need to re-record your bassist part with another player"? Or
Yeah, every band's different. Some projects I don't produce, I just engineer. Some people are real finicky about not having somebody else touch their art. You know what I mean? Because it's a personal thing. So I always explain when I meet somebody the first time, I explain what a producer does, what an engineer does. And when I produce projects, 9 times out of 10 I'm paid separately to produce, because there's a whole different element of stuff that I do as a producer versus just engineering. Sometimes I'll have an engineer that works with me and I'll produce, and that'll be my only job, and there'll be an extra engineer in there. Sometimes I wear both hats. But a lot of times people just don't like other people changing their arrangements because they just don't. You know, I'm really open with the band. I don't ever, you know, run a production session like a dictator. You know, it's always, I'm going to tell you what my opinion is and what I think, and I'll work as a consultant, but you can decide whether you want to follow that information or not. And if I really firmly believe what I'm telling them and I think they're making the wrong decision, I'll just tell them 3 or 4 times. And if they don't want to make the change by that time, then it's their project. You know, they hired me, so I will advise them that, hey, we should probably not do an 8-minute song if we want to release a single. You know, that's. But if they say, well, we really like all 8 minutes of it, I'll say it's never going to be on the radio, but we can do it. So.
What are some absolute like deal breakers that you will not stand for?
Deal breakers?
Yeah.
Guns. Had them pulled on me a few times. Haven't had any shot into me. But deal breaker is probably a gun. Anything besides that is usually good. As long as
so,
nobody
like,
gets
as far as
hurt.
like creatively, are there like certain things that you just
No.
I mean, if you're gonna put your name on as a producer, is there a point where you go, well, I'm not producing because this band isn't listening to me, or?
I will create pseudonames.
Go.
Yep. I've got multiple names on projects that you just can't get through, you know, and just make them up on the fly. You know, how do you want to be listed on the CD? I want to be listed as Hotshot Jackson. So, and you know, because that's my reputation too. And sometimes, you know, I can tell an artist all day long, hey, this is not a good idea. But they say, I want distortion on everything so you can't hear any lyrics. Okay, let's do it. But you know, it's creative. So,
What's the most exciting project that you've been working on in the last couple of years?
Boy, that's a tough one.
Justin Bieber.
No. He wasn't bad at all. You know, he really wasn't. Not like the stuff you see on, you know, on like TMZ and that kind of stuff.
I actually like the kid.
He's very talented. You know, he came in and he was mellow. He was, you know, like the music industry in general. I don't see much. You see a fair amount of alcohol in sessions, and from time to time you'll see people smoking pot, and I don't really see much else outside of that drug industry-wise. It was way worse 10 years ago. But none of that stuff, I mean, I try to keep the studio clean out of all that, but his entire group were all just straight-laced guys, and he was like the only guy that had to, you know, smoke a joint before he played or performed. And they were all mad at him about it, you know, so it's like weed and Oreos. That's what it takes to sell 2 million records. I mean,
Right.
okay, you know, it didn't make sense to me, but I mean, I'm good.
get the pot?
Whatever works. Whatever works.
How are our students doing over there?
They're doing good. Let's see, we've got 4?
I think 4.
Yeah. Tom's a really hard worker.
Yeah.
Chad goes up and down.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
Chad's kind of got a mind of his own. I got to keep him motivated all the time. Sarah's a really hard worker. And who else do we have? Try to
Sarah
say.
Bailey, she's a first year student.
She work in the cage, don't she?
No.
No. Was the one chick working in the cage work over there, right?
Andrea?
Yeah.
No, Andrea doesn't work
She
over
don't. I know.
there. Tom, Chad, Sarah. Maybe
You
that's
won.
it.
Is
right
it 3?
now.
I thought it was 4. It might be 3.
She worked.
Joe Walsh is my favorite. We did a bunch of days of work with the James Gang. They were re-recording a lot of their old hits, so they could license them and not pay the record company. So I got myself in a lot of trouble on that session. They didn't tell me what they were doing, and I was so excited to have Joe Walsh in the studio that, of course, I'm going to blast that out on social media. And Bill Simzik is a producer that did all the Eagles records. Just like just one notch down from like Jesus Christ in terms of the music industry. And Bill is a super nice guy, and I, you know, shot a blast out. You know, Joe Walsh is in doing Funk 49 re-recorded, and that guy came in my office and he was like, take it down now. And before I even took it down, it had gotten to like 10 classic rock websites that were all blogging about it, and it like hit, you know, the airwaves like, and there was like 3 million views. And I wish our local posts were like that. But yeah, but those guys were the stories that they told us. It was so funny when we were in the studio. They had me go buy a bunch of lamps because the studio is naturally pretty dark. People just like it to be more ambient. And everybody in the group was all like 60 years up. So none of them could see. So they're like, we got to get this. The room looked as bright as this. And this was like no ambient to be creative to me. And they were making jokes. They said, boy, look at the desk. Like we had a rack where all our gear is. And it was like water bottles, a cheese tray, some fruit, and a couple of like soft drinks, that kind of stuff. And they said, boy, look where we've come. It used to be pot, cocaine, bunch of numbers for hookers, and you know, and this. And he said, boy, look where we're at now. And it's just interesting to hear the stories, just because wow, I don't even know how these guys survived the 70s. You know, yeah. Just I really don't know how they survived. When I see pictures of guys like Keith Richards, yeah, how is that guy alive? The stuff that they did, but such great stories. And hearing them play, if you didn't look at them and saw their age, I mean, you would think it was like 1970. They were just that good. Every take was perfect. That was fun. It was inspiring. It was like seeing you know, all my idols all in one place at one time.
I remember when they were doing that.
I'm crossing my fingers about. There's a lot of really big artists coming in town for this Rock Hall induction.
Oh, right.
So we
they might
get calls for rehearsals. They'll never tell me who they are